It's fascinating that you started in the product thing looking at what you needed as opposed to what the masses needed, because if anything, the one product or the one line of product that kind of seemed to change it all from the outside anyway was the scope system, which no one knew they needed at the time, but now everyone needs. Yeah. How do you, there's something visionary about that.
It's mad, like, because I don't think there is. And at the time, so the story behind it, at the time of developing it, me and Kev were fishing this big pit, local to here, 100-acre jobby, regularly. Like, we'd actually got stuck into it. So doing a night, maybe 2 nights a week. I was baiting it a couple of times on top of that. So I was always up there. And accessibility weren't great. You had to park a decent enough distance away, you know, that you were lugging gear. Couldn't really use a barrow for most of it, so it's kind of like handballing it, rucksacks, rods, and yeah, through lots of brambles, lots of Norfolk reeds, 6-foot rod packages, and he just had enough one day. He's had enough, like, and he was sitting there. There was quite a lot of thinking time up there, Rich. There was a lot of development done on that lake, to be fair, because it was one of them. As much as I would go for a wander off, a lot of it we were hidden in this Norfolk reed and that, and we'd just sit and talk for hours and hours, you know, from first light to an hour or 2 into darkness. We had a lot of time to talk and stuff, and a lot of good development come out of it, and that's where Scope come from. And he was just like, nah, like, I'm gonna retract the butt into a thing. But pre that, you know, maybe 2 or 3 years prior to that, there's a local syndicate here. It's got a bit of heritage in this area called Star Lane. I had a ticket for a period. Matt Downing at the time had a ticket. Tom had tickets. Reedy had a ticket. Not all at the same time, but we'd all been on and off this particular syndicate water, and it's long and narrow. Not that long, but it's certainly narrow. And your longest cast is like 35 metres, you know, at best. Some of it's much shorter. And probably Kev would have said to us, look boys, you need to get on these jungle sticks. We did a Pursuit jungle stick. To be fair, I don't think we even sold it at the time. It was a case of going up into, or looking in any nook and cranny to try and find some of these rods. So we all had a set of these like 9-footers, and we were using them for these casts, you know. Pre that, Kev had used them there and some other waters. And yeah, it was just really organic. Do you know what I mean? Kev was like pissed off with getting his rods caught in the brambles. He's like, I want a shorter pack down size to get in and out of this particular lake. Us younger lads had already been just a couple of years previous using 9-foot rods for our fishing, carp fishing. He'd done it in the past anyway, and yeah, we launched it, and you must have been one of the first to see it, Rich, to be fair. Trade shows, like, you must have been, and we kind of got laughed at. It certainly weren't received very well that first year.
Which kind of brings me back to the point, people didn't know they needed these things.
Nah.
So how did you know that they needed these things? And because it's been a huge success, right?
Monumental. Yeah. It was so much of a big success now that every manufacturer is offering some kind of
was going to be my next question.
Yeah. Which is a really nice thing, you know, and we had carte blanche for a good few years, you know. I think probably 2, 3, 4 years down the line, people are still thinking they can't be selling that many of these. Yeah, it's another example of Nash's mind. You know, we weren't sitting on that lake with untold hours and going, oh my God, we need to come up with something. We need to develop fishing tackle. It was like, here's the problem. I'm getting pissed, this is Kev. I'm getting pissed off getting my 6-foot rods caught in the brambles. I want a shorter pack down size. A lot of it I was wading out. He was wading out. We were using a bait boat. We were flitting with a bait boat. We certainly weren't casting like 120s, 130s, 140s, Rich. We just, you know, and that's the point, mate. That's the bit where I don't understand why people didn't realise they didn't need it, because unless you are chucking, you don't need that big long rod, in my opinion. Like, why do you need that big long rod? You know, I'll always be honest with people, the downside of a scope rod, especially the 6-footers, the downside of those little sawn-offs is, if a fish kites proper left and right up your margin, yeah, you ain't got the leverage. You know, and they haven't got the ability to cast as far. But when you kind of living in Essex especially, not just Essex, I'm talking right across Europe, you know, not everyone is chucking. So why do you need 12 foot of carbon? Like, they got far more plus points than they have negatives.
Now, the launch of Scope meshed perfectly with the urban banks idea. Now, was that something that you conceived because of Scope, or was that something that was a beautiful coincidence?
Nah, just coincidence. And even the films, if you take Scope out of the equation and you just talk about urban banks, you've only got to watch the first episode. You know, so with Rich Wilby, we've gone on the Grand Union, south of Leighton Buzzard. There isn't even a bit of brick, Rich, like, let alone graffiti and all this shit. There's nothing. It's just the countryside. It was all down to Winston. Because me, Winston and Ollie, we like the trainers, we like the music, we like that kind of scene, and he probably got far too carried away in the edit. What should have just been a Alan and Matthew go carp fishing on the canal and catch a few, that's what the piece should have been. Because of his creative mind, he started to put like graffiti in, a bit of dubstep music, and he really went mental with it. And we launched it anyway, and people were like, yeah, this is cool, man. Like, and then we did the next one, which was more like we sat there and thought, well, they like that one. Let's go to a park lake now, and I can talk about why I like park lake fishing, and then it spiraled from there. The fact that we'd launched Scope around that time, absolutely nothing to do with it.
But looking back, the two things are incredibly well matched. Right, he almost created that cult.
They are. I can't deny it. You know, I can't deny it that if you like running around on the London Underground, Scope is perfect for you. If you like maybe sneaking into a park lake or whatever, the Scope is perfect for you. But for me as an angler, you know, I don't personally, for example, have a set of Scope rods for urban fishing, and then when I'm going on to a big pit somewhere, it's all I use now. Really, is all I use. I can't reiterate the point enough. Nothing's perfect, you know. It's rare to find an item of tackle that is just perfect for every eventuality, and I think rods in particular, you know, there's certain situations I really like a soft rod, there's certain situations I need a beefed up stiff rod, there's certain situations where I want a really short rod, and there's certain situations where I want 12 or 13 foot, and it's just weighing up, you know, when a customer says to me, which one shall I go for? Or should I even go for one? Should I get rid of my 12 footers? Or you, as a fisherman, you've just got to evaluate, what do you do the most, you know? Because I personally believe a set of 12 foot rods hinders someone fishing small venues or making short casts. I really genuinely believe it, in terms of, unless you're a don at a big pendulum underarm, which I don't see many people being any good at. You know, most people that want to cast 20, 30, 40 yards, 30 yards, they're overhead casting still. And with these long rods, you don't get a great low profile trajectory with them. And when you're trying to tuck it up underneath an island or up against a bush or whatever, the short rods come into their own.
And despite what's become quite widespread appeal, I guess there are certain portions of the sport that they'll find it more difficult. You don't bump into too many at linear. There's still a style of fishing there.
Yeah, of course, yeah. I haven't been to linear for a long time, so I can't actually comment, but I would agree with that statement.
But you've still got conventional rods at Nash. They haven't stopped selling.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure, mate. We still sell 3 different price points of 12-foot rod. 2 of those, we also offer 13-foot rod.
You never use them. You never use them.
I don't use them, Rich. You know, I don't use them. And that's not because I'm marketing Scope. That's not because... It's just because, as an angler, I always want to catch them in the edge. Always. And I will pick my waters accordingly to give me the best opportunity to catch them in the edge. I'm not a very proficient caster at all. I've not fished the waters where I've needed to be, so therefore I haven't gained that experience. I haven't gained that skill, really. And yeah, I'd just rather catch them in close.
There is a point in this interview when we're going to tip over into your fishing. I think, you know, we want to know more about you as an angler, because obviously we see a lot of you as an angler. But there's lots of things that people won't know. Mm-hmm. I remember we were so lucky to have you as our first ever session film on Cypography.
God, how long ago was that?
Well, it's almost exactly 3 years.
Go on, boys. Yeah. Well done.
We're still here.
Yes, big ups.